This story is titled, After Returning from a Love Trip with Her Lover, My Fiancée Asked for an Open Relationship. I kicked her out. Hey everyone, I'm a 29-year-old marketing director living in Boston, and I need to get this story off my chest. It's about how my world completely turned upside down in a matter of days. And I'm still trying to process everything that happened. I had been with my fiancée for 5 years. She's 26, and I'll call her Kate for this post. We met during our sophomore year in college, and from the beginning, she was everything you could want in a partner. Smart, funny, and she had this incredible energy that just drew people to her. We started as friends, but it quickly became something more meaningful. After we graduated, our relationship continued to flourish. We moved in together, shared bills, and started planning our future. Everything seemed perfect. I proposed to her last year and she said yes without any hesitation. We were already talking about buying a house and planning to have kids someday. I genuinely thought we were building our perfect life together. Then everything changed after her girls' trip. She was gone for about a week with her friends. Before leaving, she was super excited, making all these plans and talking enthusiastically about everything they were going to do. I encouraged her to go and have fun. She works hard at her graphic design job, and I thought a break would be good for her. When she returned, something felt immediately off. I can't explain it exactly, but she was physically there while mentally somewhere else entirely. Usually, after trips, she would greet me with big hugs and share stories about her adventures. This time, she barely said a word. When I asked about the trip, she just shrugged and said, "It was fine," then walked past me to the bedroom, leaving her suitcase by the door. This behavior was completely unlike her. That night at dinner, she barely touched her pad thai and kept scrolling on her phone. She had never been the type to be obsessed with her phone before. Red flags were starting to wave, but I ignored them and told myself she was just tired from traveling. The next few days got even weirder. She was constantly on her phone now, literally glued to it 24/7. This had never been like her before, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. Her behavior around me changed completely. She avoided eye contact, got distracted when we talked, and all physical affection between us just disappeared. We had always been pretty affectionate before. I'm not saying we were all over each other all the time, but now there was this invisible wall between us, and I could feel something was seriously wrong. I decided to give her some space, thinking maybe she'd snap out of whatever was bothering her. I know relationships aren't perfect, and I figured if I backed off a bit, she'd open up when she was ready. Spoiler alert, that's not what happened. The distance between us only got worse. I tried to talk to her after dinner one night, asking if something was bothering her or if there was anything on her mind. She just said everything was fine and claimed I was overthinking things. But her voice didn't match her words. It sounded like she was trying to convince herself more than me. I let it go for the time being, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. After 5 years together, you pick up on these things. I didn't want to push too hard, but the uncertainty was eating me up inside. I kept wondering what was really going on. I started noticing more weird patterns. She would get texts late at night and flip her phone over whenever I walked into the room. I'm not the type to snoop or make accusations, but this wasn't normal behavior for her. I thought about confronting her, but didn't want to seem paranoid. Instead, I tried to focus on work and keep myself busy, figuring if something was up, she'd tell me eventually. Man, was I in for a surprise. Looking back now, I think I knew something big was coming. I just didn't know what it was. I should have trusted my gut more. One night, she came home from work and said we needed to talk. My heart immediately sank because, let's be real, nothing good ever starts with, "We need to talk." I tried to play it cool, but my mind was racing, wondering if I had done something wrong. We sat on the couch, and I could feel the tension in the air. She was fidgeting with her hands and avoiding eye contact like the plague classic signs that bad news was incoming. She finally started talking, hitting me with, "I've been thinking a lot about our relationship lately." Her voice was too calm, too careful, like she had rehearsed this conversation. I raised my eyebrow and asked, "Thinking about what exactly?" "Just, how we could make it better," she said, finally looking up at me. "Better? What was wrong with it now?" I wondered silently. She hesitated for a moment, biting her lip nervously. "Nothing's wrong," she said quickly. "I mean, things are great." Then she dropped the bomb. But when I was on the trip, some of the girls opened up about their relationships. They talked about how happy they are because they found ways to give each other more freedom and trust. I just sat there blinking, trying to process what she was saying. Freedom and trust? I repeated, getting more confused by the second. What does that even mean? She was twisting her hands in her lap now, her voice still weirdly calm, almost too calm, like she was trying to convince herself this was normal. She wouldn't look me in the eye and kept staring at the wall behind me as if she was scared to see my reaction. The way she said everything was so rehearsed. I could tell she had practiced this speech dozens of times, which made it feel even worse. This wasn't some random thought. She had been planning this conversation. She took a deep breath, like she was preparing for something big, then dropped the real bomb. I think we should try an open relationship. My brain literally short-circuited. I just stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. Wait, what? I managed to say, my voice coming out louder than I intended. She looked at me with a dead serious face. I've been thinking about it for a while now, she said, her words coming out all deliberate, like she was trying to convince both of us. My face must have shown my complete shock and disbelief. I just sat there staring, unable to believe what I was hearing. An open relationship? Are you serious right now? Yes, she said, her tone calm but firm. It's not as crazy as it sounds. A lot of people are doing it. It works for them. It's about trust and being honest with each other. I felt my voice rising with anger. How does bringing other people into our relationship have anything to do with trust? Where is this even coming from? She sighed and ran a hand through her hair. I know it's a lot to take in, but I talked to some of the girls on the trip. They shared their experiences. They're happier now. They said it's brought them closer to their partners. I shook my head in complete disbelief. And you thought what? That I'd just jump on board with this? That I'd be okay with it? Her face softened as she tried to act all patient with me. I didn't say you had to decide right away. I just think it's something we should consider. We've been together for so long. I want to make sure we're still growing, not getting stuck. I felt this huge knot forming in my chest. So now you think we're stuck? After 5 years together, you think the solution is what? Sleeping with other people? She flinched at my words but didn't back down. It's not just about that, she insisted. It's about exploring who we are as individuals while still being together. It doesn't mean I don't love you. Meanwhile, I was sitting there feeling absolutely miserable. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. 5 years, 5 damn years of building a life together? And now she wanted to throw it all away like this. We'd never even talked about open relationships before. It wasn't part of who we were or what we wanted, at least as far as I knew. I asked her where this was coming from. Are you unhappy? Is something missing in our relationship? She claimed no. She said she loved me. She said our relationship was great. She just thought this could make it even better. That made zero sense to me. If things are great, why would you want to mess with them? I asked. Her response made me even more angry. It's not messing with it, she replied. It's evolving it. I leaned forward and narrowed my eyes at her. Is this about someone specific? Did you meet someone on the trip? Her head snapped up and she looked almost offended. What? Oh, of course not. She shook her head quickly. You're sure? I pressed, studying her face carefully. Because this is coming out of nowhere. It's starting to feel like there's more to this. More than what you're saying. I swear, she said, her voice getting higher than usual. There's no one else. I didn't meet anyone. It's not about that. It's just something I've been thinking about. That's all. I leaned back and crossed my arms. You swear there's no one else? I watched her carefully. She nodded with a tight expression. Yes, I swear, she insisted. This isn't about anyone else. It's about us. I told her I needed time to think. I didn't even know what to say anymore. I went to the bedroom and sat there staring at the wall, my thoughts racing everywhere. Was this even real? Was she serious? Did I even know her anymore? After about an hour, I came back out. She was still on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just nuked our relationship. I stood there for a second and finally spoke up. I can't do this. She finally looked up, her face completely calm. What do you mean? I mean, I can't do an open relationship, I said firmly. I'm not interested, and I don't think I ever will be. I kept my voice steady. She set her phone down on the coffee table and crossed her arms. Well, she said slowly, maybe we should take some time. Figure out if we're still on the same page about what we want. That was it for me. I just stared at her, unable to process how casual she was being. 5 years, I said, my voice starting to shake. We've been together for 5 years. And this is what you have to say? Like it's no big deal? Her face changed as she finally started realizing how serious this was. I didn't mean it like that, she said quickly. I just think we need to talk about what we want for the future. There's nothing to talk about, I said firmly. If you want an open relationship, then you're not the person I thought you were. I'm not going to sit here while you dismantle everything we've built just because your friends got in your head. She sat there stunned. You're seriously kicking me out over this? Her voice was breaking. Yes, I stared her down. Pack your things and leave. Her eyes filled with tears as she started crying. I didn't mean for it to go like this, she sobbed. I just wanted to have a conversation about it. That's all. I didn't mean to hurt you. There's nothing left to say, I told her. This isn't a conversation I ever wanted to have. I can't do this, and I won't. She wiped at her face, sniffling as she got up and headed to the bedroom to pack a bag. I didn't follow her. I didn't say anything else. A few minutes later, she came out with a bag over her shoulder. She stopped at the door and asked softly, Is this really it? It is, I replied, not even looking at her. She hesitated, then opened the door and walked out. I sat down on the couch and stared at the empty space where her things used to be. I felt like my whole world had just imploded. I kept asking myself how we got here, but no matter how many times I replayed it, I couldn't find an answer that made sense. That was the beginning of the end. The night she left, the apartment felt empty. Her stuff was still everywhere. Clothes still in the closet, toiletries in the bathroom, all her little things scattered around. But she was gone. It hit me really hard. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I grabbed it groggily from the nightstand to find her name everywhere. Texts, missed calls, voicemails. I couldn't escape it. I scrolled through her messages. Please, can we just talk? I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just want to explain. I played a snippet of one of her voicemails. Hey, I know you're mad. You have every right to be. But please just give me a chance to talk. I need to explain. I can't lose you like this. Then her friends started calling. They'd heard what happened and were all tripping over themselves to apologize. They claimed it was their fault, saying they were hyping up open relationships during the trip and that she just got carried away. One even said, We didn't think she'd actually bring it up to you, like that somehow made it better. I told them all to back off. I wasn't interested in their excuses or justifications. What pissed me off the most was how easily influenced she was. If her friends could talk her into this, what else could they talk her into? My family got involved too. My mom kept saying, You dodged a bullet. My dad rarely gets involved in my personal life, but even he spoke up, saying I did the right thing by standing my ground. Their support meant a lot, especially since I was already second-guessing myself. Her family was a different story. Her mom called, saying I should give Kate another chance because she's just confused. Her dad tried to guilt-trip me. You're throwing away a beautiful relationship over a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? She asked to sleep with other people. How is that a misunderstanding? The worst part was dealing with our mutual friends. Some tried to make me feel like I had overreacted. One even said, She was just being honest about what she wants. Isn't that a good thing? Yeah, honesty is great, but there's a difference between honesty and blindsiding your fiancé with something that goes against everything you built together. One friend, let's call him Tom, really got under my skin. He kept telling me I was being old-fashioned and that I needed to be more open-minded. It's 2024, man. Relationships aren't black and white anymore. I couldn't believe he was defending her, especially since he had seen what I was going through. Then there was Lisa, one of Kate's closer friends. She let something slip that made everything worse. It turned out Kate had been talking about open relationships before the trip even happened. Apparently, she had brought it up as a joke during a group hangout a few months ago. Everyone just laughed it off then. This made me feel even worse, like I'd been left in the dark while she was testing the waters for months. Just great. I spent the next few days trying to figure out what to do. She kept calling, kept texting, begging to meet, saying she wanted to talk things through. Part of me wanted to hear her out, but the other part was still so angry and hurt. How do you come back from something like this? How do you trust someone again? Someone who can casually throw a grenade into your relationship? I felt stuck in a weird limbo. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to hear her excuses. But the idea of not getting answers was eating away at me. What if there was more to the story? What if she'd been lying about everything, even before the open relationship thing? I remember pacing in the living room, going over everything in my head. I even considered calling her several times. I picked up my phone repeatedly, but stopped myself every time. Finally, a couple of close friends convinced me that I needed closure. You need closure, one of them said. Otherwise, this will keep eating at you. As much as I hated to admit it, they were right. I needed answers. I eventually decided to meet her, mostly because I wanted to see if she would come clean. Something was telling me there was more to the story, and I needed to know what was really going on. I set up a time to meet at a local cafe. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for, maybe an explanation that made sense, or at least a genuine apology. But I wasn't prepared for what I was about to find out. I showed up to the cafe 10 minutes early. I wanted to get there first, find a good spot, and mentally prepare for whatever was coming. I was nervous as hell. I just wanted it to be over with. She walked in right on time. She looked like she hadn't slept much. Her hair was messy and she had minimal makeup on. She looked stressed. A small part of me felt bad for her, but I had to remind myself why we were there. She sat down across from me. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other. Then she started talking, apologizing right away. She said she had handled everything wrong, that she never meant to hurt me. She claimed the idea of an open relationship wasn't a long-term plan. She said her friends brought it up during the trip, and she got caught up in their excitement. According to her, it was just a what-if scenario, something to talk about, not something she was serious about. I never wanted to hurt you, she kept saying. I just wanted to explore the idea together. That's all. I told her that if she really valued our relationship, she wouldn't have dropped a bomb like that. She should have talked to me first, not waited until after the trip where her friends clearly influenced her. She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. She said she understood and looked genuinely upset. But I still wasn't buying it. Something about her explanation didn't add up. That's when I decided to ask something I wasn't planning on. Can I see your phone? Her face went pale. I'll never forget that look. She hesitated for a second, then handed it over. She probably thought I wouldn't actually check. I wasn't usually that kind of guy. I had never felt the need to invade her privacy before, but my gut feeling was too strong to ignore. I sat there holding her phone, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. Part of me didn't want to do it. What if I found something that completely changed how I saw her? But the other part needed to know. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. My hands were shaking as I opened her messages. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. There it was, a conversation with a guy I didn't recognize. They had been chatting for a while, and it was clear this wasn't just friendly banter. I found flirty messages, late-night texts, and suggestive comments about seeing where things go. The first message that caught my eye was from some guy I didn't know. They were chatting back and forth, and it wasn't just friendly small talk. He was calling her babe and cutie, and she wasn't shutting it down. Instead, she was encouraging it, responding with laughing emojis and saying things like, "You're too much." One message from him said, "Can't wait to see you again." I felt absolutely disgusted. That was all I needed to see. This wasn't just her thinking about an open relationship. She'd already started exploring it. I put the phone down and looked at her. She was already crying, mumbling something about how it wasn't what it looked like, that they were just talking. I told her to stop. There was no point in lying anymore. "So this open relationship idea wasn't just an idea, was it?" I asked her. "You were already testing it out." She flinched, her breath catching in her throat. "No, it wasn't like that," she said quickly, her words tumbling over each other. I was just talking to him. That's all. It wasn't serious. It was a mistake, okay? A stupid mistake." "A mistake?" My voice was rising now. "You were talking to him, flirting with him, making plans with him, and you expect me to believe it was just a mistake?" "It was." She was crying harder now. "I didn't mean for it to go anywhere. I love you. I don't want to lose you." I looked at her, full of anger. "You already lost me," I said flatly. "The second you thought it was okay to bring someone else into this, into us, you lost me." "Please," she begged. "Please don't end this over one stupid mistake. I'll do anything to fix this." I stayed calm because we were in public, but inside I was furious. The fact that she had even entertained the idea while we were engaged was enough for me to walk away. She kept apologizing, but I didn't want to hear it. I stood up and told her I was done, then left the cafe. As I walked away, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, sadness, relief, and even a bit of clarity. I watched her sitting there crying, trying to explain herself, but her tears didn't feel sincere. They seemed more like panic. She was scrambling to fix a situation she had lost control of. Her words felt rehearsed. "It was just talking," she kept repeating it, but her tone didn't match her words. There was no real regret in her voice, just fear. fear of consequences, fear of being alone, fear of losing the comfort of what we had. Looking at her, I finally realized I couldn't do this anymore. No matter what she said, the damage was done. For the first time in weeks, I knew exactly where I stood. I wasn't going to let her drag me through the mud. I wasn't going to let her play games with my emotions. Whatever we had, it was over. After our meeting at the cafe, I thought that would be the last of it. I blocked her number that same night and deleted her from every social media platform. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to hear from her. I didn't even want to know what she was doing. I was done. I got a few days of peace. She didn't try to reach out, and I finally started to feel like I could move on. Then, out of nowhere, mutual friends started texting me. They had heard what happened at the cafe, and most were reaching out to apologize. Word got around about the guy she was talking to, and suddenly, people who had been defending her before were switching sides. One of her friends told me she had started dating the guy right after our breakup. I wasn't surprised at this point. It was obvious she had been lining him up in the background. What caught me off guard, though, was how quickly things went south for her. Apparently, she was posting pictures of them together all over social media, trying to make it look like they were the perfect couple. Mutual friends said it came off as forced, like she was trying too hard to prove something. One of her captions read, "When you find someone who truly understands you." It felt like a dig at me, but the funny thing was, people weren't buying it. A couple of friends told me she had blocked them after they called her out for moving on so fast. Then, just a week later, the post stopped. No more pictures, no more cute captions, just radio silence. Word started spreading that he had ghosted her. She was losing it, telling people how he had led her on and used her. But honestly, I wasn't surprised. It was like karma showed up to collect. She had no idea how to handle it. When I heard about this, I didn't feel bad for her. Call it petty, but it felt like karma doing its thing. You can't treat people the way she treated me and expect everything to work out perfectly. Life doesn't work like that. Some of our mutual friends started cutting ties with her. They said she had been acting toxic, spreading lies about me, and playing the victim card hard. She was telling people I was manipulative and that I didn't value her. Complete BS. Luckily, most friends saw through it, especially after finding out she had hooked up with the guy literally the day after our breakup. It was wild how quickly people turned when the truth came out. A couple of the same friends who told me I had overreacted were now apologizing left and right. They admitted they were wrong to doubt me and said they didn't realize how messed up the situation really was. I told them it was fine, but honestly, it felt good having their support again. As for her, she tried calling me from different numbers after I blocked her. I guess when the guy ghosted her, she started rethinking things and decided she wanted me back. She left me a voicemail saying she was ready to work things out. She said she realized how much she loved me. I didn't respond. I didn't even think about responding. By then, I was completely over it. The person I thought she was and the person she turned out to be were two very different people. There was no going back after everything that happened. Cutting ties wasn't just about technology, about blocking her number and social media. It was about fully removing her from my life, both physically and mentally. I packed up the rest of her stuff. She'd taken the essentials the night she left, but a lot of her things were still scattered around the apartment. Her clothes were still in the closet. Her toiletries were still in the bathroom. Random little things were everywhere, like her favorite coffee mug and the books she always kept on the nightstand. Packing it all up felt weirdly emotional. Every item reminded me of the life we had built. For a moment, I wondered if I was being too harsh. Then I thought back to the cafe, to the messages on her phone, and any second-guessing disappeared. I texted her from a burner number, one she didn't have saved, telling her to pick up her stuff by the end of the week, or it was going to Goodwill. She showed up 2 days later, looking like she'd been crying. I didn't let her inside. I handed her the boxes at the door, said goodbye, and closed it. She didn't argue. She didn't try to push her way in. She just stood there for a second, like she wanted to say something, then left. That was the last time I saw her in person. I still had loose ends to tie up. We had shared accounts everywhere, mutual subscriptions like Netflix and Spotify, even utility bills. I went through everything systematically, canceling what I could cancel and changing passwords on everything else. Anything that connected us had to go. I wasn't trying to be petty, I just needed a clean slate. The hardest part was dealing with mutual friends. Some had already cut ties with her after everything came out. Others were still trying to stay neutral. I get why they didn't want to pick sides, but for me, there was no middle ground. If someone was still hanging with her after all this went down, I didn't want them in my life. It was as simple as that. I told a few people outright that I wasn't comfortable staying friends if they were still close with her. Most understood, but a couple of people acted like I was being dramatic. "You can't just erase 5 years like it never happened," one friend said. But that's exactly what I needed to do. One by one, I started trimming down my circle. It wasn't about punishing anyone. It was about protecting myself. I didn't want to hear about her. I didn't want to see her in tagged photos. I didn't want updates about her life. A few weeks later, I heard from a mutual friend that she was still talking about me. She was spinning stories to make herself the victim, telling people I had overreacted. She claimed I had humiliated her. Conveniently, she left out the part where she was talking to another guy while we were engaged. I let it roll off my back. I wasn't interested in clearing my name or setting the record straight. The people who mattered already knew the truth. Anyone else could believe whatever they wanted. Eventually, the noise died down. Her name stopped coming up in conversations. The texts from people trying to mediate stopped. People trying to explain her side stopped too. She just faded into the background, like she never existed. And honestly, that's all I ever wanted. Looking back now, I realize I dodged a major bullet. It's better to find out someone's true colors now than after marriage or when kids are involved. It still hurts sometimes, thinking about what could have been, but I know I made the right choice. You can't build a future with someone who would throw away 5 years for some fantasy about open relationships and a guy who ended up ghosting her anyway. Life moves on, and I get better every day. Sometimes I still catch myself thinking about the good times, but then I remember how it ended. I remember the messages on her phone. I remember her fake tears at the cafe. And I know I made the right choice. Some things just aren't meant to be fixed. Some people aren't meant to stay in your life. The important thing is knowing when to let go.